You know those small towns where it feels like everybody knows everybody? Grubbs, Arkansas is one of those places. Population? Just over 300. It's built on this incredible sense of community and safety. But back in August of 2020, that feeling was just shattered. A crime didn't just take one of their own, it revealed a darkness that was hiding right there in plain sight. This is the story of Sydney Sutherland and the fight for justice that shook a small town to its very core. These are the words Sydney Sutherland chose for her high school yearbook. And really, they tell you everything you need to know about who she was. This wasn't just some nice-sounding quote she picked out. It was like the blueprint for her entire life. A life she spent giving back, lifting people up, and just caring. So before this tragedy turned her into a headline, Sydney was this vibrant, essential part of her community. She was a daughter, a girlfriend, a sister, a friend, deeply, deeply woven into the fabric of this tiny Arkansas town. At 25, Sydney was a nurse, living a life that was all about connection. She was the youngest of three kids, and her relationship with her mom, Maggie, well, Maggie described them as best friends who talk on the phone multiple times a day. Everyone knew her for this huge smile and her big heart, a real firecracker who absolutely adored her nieces, her dogs, and her daily workouts. She really was, in so many ways, the heart of her family. Okay, so let's go to August 19th, 2020. Sydney had just gotten back from a family trip. After stopping by her mom's, she went home to do something she loved, go for a run, clear her head. It was a route she'd run 1,000 times, on roads she'd known her whole life. But this time, she wasn't going to come home. And this is how fast a normal afternoon spiraled into a total crisis. She's last seen around 2:30 in the afternoon by a UPS driver. A few hours go by, and this quiet worry starts to creep in. Her boyfriend, Alex, can't get a hold of her, calls go unanswered, Snapchats are left unopened. And this just wasn't like Sydney at all. That quiet worry turned into outright panic. By the next morning, a massive search is underway. And then they find a clue that is just chilling. Her phone, found on the side of the road, totally undamaged, and way too close to her house. The response from the community was, well, it was immediate and just overwhelming. Over 300 people, I mean, that's basically the entire population of Grubbs, dropped everything to help. Friends, neighbors, even strangers, all out there on ATVs and on foot, searching fields, back roads, all with one single desperate mission: bring Sydney home. And right in the middle of this massive, chaotic search, there's this moment of just profound personal pain. While she's out there on her hands and knees, scouring the roadside, Sydney's mom, Maggie, finds this single white bead. To anybody else, it's nothing. But to her, she knew. It was a piece of her daughter's bracelet. A heartbreaking sign that Sydney had been right there, and that something was terribly, terribly wrong. As the search got more and more intense, this fear started to grow that maybe some stranger, some monster had come into their town. But the truth? It was so much more chilling. It was something that would shake the very foundation of their community. The person responsible wasn't an outsider. They were one of them, walking right among them. So this was the question just haunting everyone. In a place that's built on trust, on familiarity, the idea that one of their own could do this, it just seemed impossible. Who would betray that trust in the most horrific way you can imagine? The answer was just unthinkable. The suspect was a 28-year-old guy named Quake Llewellyn, a third-generation farmer from a well-known local family. He didn't just know of Sydney, he knew the family. He actually spoke to her mother during the search, telling her he'd seen Sydney jogging and that everything looked fine. He joined the Facebook groups to help find her. He was offering comfort while hiding this unimaginable secret. And here it is, the staggering contrast. The two faces of Quake Llewellyn. To Sydney's mom, Maggie, he's offering a reassuring hug and saying she was just running. But to investigators, he confessed to a monster story that he hit Sydney with his truck, abducted her, sexually assaulted her, and then buried her body in a shallow grave on a field near his farm. The level of betrayal is it's astonishing. You know, Llewellyn actually put himself on the police's radar by telling them he might have been the last one to see her. But his story just unraveled, and fast. The physical evidence was undeniable. Police found blood on his truck. His own cell phone data, from a farming app of all things, put him right at the burial site. And get this,
Security footage from his own house showed his truck coming back after the abduction with a brand new dent in it.
So, with a confession and all this evidence, the focus shifts. It's no longer about finding a killer, it's about holding him accountable. And for the Sutherland family, this meant starting this long, painful journey through the legal system to find some kind of justice for Sydney. 408 days. Just think about that for a second. More than a year of waiting, of grieving, of knowing who did this, but having to endure this slow, grinding process of the justice system before he would finally have to answer for his crimes.
So Llewellyn was facing the death penalty. But ultimately, the Sutherland family had to make an impossibly difficult decision. They agreed to a plea deal. Why? To avoid a long, traumatic trial, and maybe most importantly, to guarantee a final outcome. In exchange for taking the death penalty off the table, Quake Llewellyn pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. No chance of parole. Ever. In court, Sydney's mother Maggie stood and faced her daughter's killer, and her words, they cut right to the heart of everything. The hands you hugged me with are the same hands you killed her with. It's just a mother's raw pain, a final, devastating confrontation. Because as she said, true justice was impossible. True justice would be having Sydney back. But the story doesn't end in that courtroom. The community of Grubs, the same one that came together to search for Sydney, now comes together to remember her. They found ways to make sure that her light, her gift, continues to be given away. And her memory lives on in some really beautiful ways. There's an annual event now called Finish Sydney's Run, where people come together to go the distance she never could. That highway overpass near where she ran, it now bears her name. And there's a scholarship fund that helps future nursing students, carrying on her passion for taking care of others. So we end right where we started, with Sydney's own words. Her life was about finding her gift and giving it away. And in the face of this unimaginable tragedy, her family and her whole community decided not to let that purpose die with her. They chose to keep giving her gift of compassion, of community, of service to the world. And it leaves you wondering, how can we all carry on the light of those we've lost?